Welcome back to the Extraordinary Podcast. I am your host, Keanu Trujillo, founder of Alchemy Co-working, and today I'm going to tell you a story. In the early 1900s, there was a store owner named Mr. Smith. He owned a grocery store called Smith's Grow in a small town here in North Carolina that served the community. And Smith's Grow was a place that most people went to do their grocery shopping, their essential shopping in the area. And there was a young man named William Henry Ballard. William Henry Ballard had served in the Navy. William Henry Ballard was a mill worker, and William Henry Ballard had a vision and a dream to start a barbershop. He would visit Smith's Grow. He would do his shopping just as most people in the area did. And somehow, at some point, Mr. Smith found out about William Henry Ballard's dream to open a barbershop. Whether he told him directly or he had heard in the community that he had wanted to do this, he was working in the mill. So for whatever reason, Mr. Smith wanted to support the vision of young William Henry Ballard. At one point, Mr. Smith tells Mr. William Henry Ballard, "Hey, I have space in the back of my grocery store. It's storage space, it's dirty, it's old, I have some stuff back there, but if you clean it out, you can make it yours, and I will give you the space to start your barbershop." Mr. Ballard thought, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. Thank you for making space for me. I'm going to begin. So Mr. Ballard set out to work to clean out the space and make it his own. It wasn't much. It didn't have any windows. It was a big closet, but it was enough. It was enough space to start his business. It was enough space to pursue his vision and his dream of starting his own business. Well, business would be good. Business would take off quickly, and Mr. Ballard soon had to move into his own barbershop just down the street. But if it weren't for Mr. Smith making space for him in the back of his grocery store, Mr. Ballard would have had a delayed start if he had started at all. We don't know. But Mr. Smith made space for him to begin. Space that to Mr. Smith, it was just storage. I wasn't using that anyway. But I knew what it could be for Mr. Ballard, and Mr. Ballard knew what it could be for his dream, his family, and his vision. So as Mr. Ballard moved into his barbershop down the way, he opened Ballard's Barbershop, and he took on apprentices. He took on other folks that were pursuing their dream and building their own service business. And Mr. Ballard had a grandson, a great-grandson, named Preston Wilson. And Preston Wilson would go and visit his great-grandfather and spend time in the barbershop. He would remember getting a nickel or a dime here and there for sweeping up the floor, but it shaped Preston in the man that he would become. It shaped Preston in the way that he would treat people, the way that he would value people, the way that he would eventually go on to make space for others. But he would watch his great-grandfather behind that barber chair day after day, and it taught him, in a way, I think it planted a seed of what he would become as far as taking a vision and making that reality, regardless of where you come from, whether it be a mill worker that thought, I want to be able to provide my own path. I want to be able to provide for my family in my own way. So Mr. Ballard would go on to pass away, and he would leave Preston Wilson his barber chair. Preston Wilson wanted to go into ministry. He pursued a path in ministry and wanted to spend his life sharing Jesus and sharing the gospel. And he went to a foreign country to help and assist them, but they needed some money to build a church building. So he thought, well, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to go see what I can do to raise some money quickly. So he comes back home to the small town in North Carolina named Belmont and asks around, what's the fastest way that I can make some money? And some people in his life tell him, well, real estate is a fast way to make some money. Well, Preston learned along that path that he was able to raise the money and send it back to the church so they could build their church building, and realized I can impact more ministry through real estate, through building, than I could if I was doing the ministry. I'm going to stick to that. Well, fast forward, Preston's in his mid-20s. He's building different businesses and exploring different paths of business. Again, a seed that I believe was planted by his time with Mr. William Henry Ballard as a barber, and he had this barber chair. And this barber chair was following him around everywhere he moved. He was lugging it around with him, and he needed some money for a down payment on some real estate. So he looked around, what can I do? What do I have? What can I sell to raise this money so I can make this down payment? And he saw the chair. He saw the chair and saw that it was valuable, that it had value, that he could sell it. So he sold his grandfather's barber chair. And that investment, that sale, went on to purchase real estate that would eventually grow a real estate and a general contractor's business that would eventually manifest in a salon called William Henry Signature Salon. And William Henry Signature Salon was Preston's way of honoring his great-grandfather. See, Preston had a lot of regret after he sold that chair. After he sold the chair, he tried to hunt it down, tried to find it and buy it back, but it was unfortunately stripped for parts and it could never be recovered. But now in hindsight, we know that that chair was a seed, an investment in Preston's future business and opportunities, not only for himself, but the people he would go on to make space for, just like Mr. Smith did for Mr. Ballard. Mr. Ballard made space and opportunity for Preston, and Preston used that to honor the name William Henry and started William Henry Salon. Today, William Henry Salon has 3 salon locations, 1 spa, and a Ballard's Barbershop, honoring William Henry Ballard's original barbershop and creating space for over 100 different people, barbers and stylists and estheticians, massage therapists, anyone in health and beauty. He's now making space for that next person. What Mr. Smith did for one person and planted that seed for Mr. Ballard now has blossomed into a forest of others that are now pursuing that opportunity. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Preston didn't know about Mr. Smith and what Mr. Smith did to make space for Mr. Ballard. However, Preston had made space, he and his wife Summer, for several entrepreneurs over the year without knowing it. There was a seed, there was a culture, there was character there that was instilled that he didn't know Mr. Smith had done that for Mr. Ballard. So Preston had made space for a man named John Logan. John Logan worked in corporate America, he worked in banking, and he wanted to start his own gym. While Preston had space in the back of one of his buildings in Belmont and said, hey, you can start there. Does that story sound familiar? In 2018, I met Preston Wilson. I met Summer Wilson. And I had a vision and I had a dream, but I didn't think that I could pursue it. I didn't know that it was possible. I didn't know that I could build my own business. But Summer, again, this culture that Summer and Preston had been creating together, they were all about making space for the next person. Summer then saw in me that, hey, Keanu, you have what it takes to pursue that dream. When I jumped out and I started building that coaching business, then Preston said, hey, I have some space in one of my salons. It's no windows. It's not much bigger than this office that I'm in now. If you're not watching on YouTube, I'll remind you we are on YouTube as well as all podcast platforms. It's not much bigger than the space I'm in now. Actually, it was smaller, no windows, but it was mine. He made space for me. And that model, that generosity, that heart to make space for the next person is the reason we sit in Alchemy Co-working today. Summer believed in me as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as someone that could provide and change the trajectory and the lineage of my family through entrepreneurship and through business ownership. Preston believed in me to say, hey, I will give you that space. I will show you how to build a business, how to be an adult as a business owner, how to do things the right way. And what they did for me out of the kindness of their heart, along with other entrepreneurs, ironically, John Logan, who Preston made space for, was someone that also poured into me and would not let me give up on this dream. What they did for me out of the kindness of their heart was the vision, was the model that I wanted to recreate with Alchemy. I thought, wow, these people did that for me. They gave me that vision, that opportunity. They gave me that space. They did this. They created a model for me to follow. I want to do that for as many people as possible. That was the seed that then sprouted into Alchemy Co-working and will sprout into the multiple locations we'll have, Lord willing, over time. But it was because they had created space. But this story, this legacy, which is what we're ultimately talking about today, is legacy, was from one random act of kindness. When you think of legacy, I want you to think about what that word means to you. And if you're like me and you come from where I come from, it means nothing to you. I never thought about legacy until I moved to North Carolina. I thought about my family. I thought about I loved them. I thought I want to provide for my family as well. But I never thought about legacy because we didn't really zoom out, didn't have the ability to zoom out on our legacy or the legacy that we're creating. But when I moved here and I started to connect with Summer and Preston, they really trained me in the mindset of legacy. What does it mean to you? Does it mean your trust fund? Does it mean your bank account? Does it mean your real estate holdings? Does it mean the material belongings you're going to leave behind? Or does it mean the people that you impact? Does it mean the lives that you changed along the way? And what I want to encourage you is, one, to lean into evaluating and establishing your legacy and understanding how powerful it is. Every person is leaving a legacy. Whether they know it or not, every person is leaving an impact in their life. Regardless of your intentionality or it's unintentionally, you are leaving a legacy behind. So be intentional about the type of legacy you leave behind. It's not in the material things, it's in the people that you impact. I don't know what Mr. Smith's business went on to become. I don't know what his real estate holdings looked like. I don't know what his financials were when he passed and what he left behind materially. What I do know is Mr. Smith made space for Mr. Ballard. Mr. Ballard instilled these values in Preston. Preston made space for Keanu, and now Keanu makes space for as many business owners as possible. It's not about what you leave behind. It's about the people that you impact. That one thing. Did Mr. Smith know, which obviously on this side of heaven he did not, that me making space for Mr. Ballard would now go on to make space for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people. Preston and Summer have done for others what they've done for me more than I even understand. But now they did it for me, so I'm going to do it for others. At the end of time, how many thousands of lives will be impacted because of that one act of kindness that Mr. Smith said, Mr. Ballard, I have space for you. You clean it up, you make it yours, I will make space. So Preston made space for the next person, and Keanu will make space for the next person, and will you make space for the next person? That is the legacy that I want to leave behind, is knowing that I made space for the next person. Not only in them being able to start their business, but if I make space for a person, even just on a one-off circumstance, that's all a person will ever have to remember you by, is that one situation. You are leaving a legacy every single day. And everything that you do and every person you interact with. It's not what happens at the end of time. It's the accumulation of what you did with your time that is your legacy. So if you haven't thought about your legacy, or you haven't thought about your legacy in this way, I want to encourage you. You are leaving a legacy today, not in what your estate plan will be, not in what your holdings will be, but today, how you treated people. You know what's going to go further than your money? You can have all the wealth in the world. Do you know what's going to go further than your finances? Your character. The way that you treated people will spread further than your finances ever will. There may be people whose names are on buildings, and all you know about them was they must have had a lot of money. But there are people that have impacted lives that will forever have that legacy to leave behind. And I want to leave you with a few quotes here. Billy Graham, the great evangelist, said, "The greatest legacy one can pass on to one's children and grandchildren is not money or other material things accumulated in one's life, but rather a legacy of character and faith." Of character and faith. The person that they are becoming, the person you are becoming, and the person that you pass along to them to become, to model. Dr. Miles Monroe, "True leaders don't invest in buildings. Jesus never built a building. They invest in people. Why? Because success without a successor is failure. So your legacy should not be in buildings, programs, or projects. Your legacy must be in people. How are you investing in people? How are you serving people? How are you impacting people? That will be your legacy. Regardless of the money and all the holdings that you amass, it will be in the people that you impacted. And finally, my favorite one so far, Martin Luther King III, not Jr., but his son. "I'm proud of my father, but my pride cannot be fully measured by that snapshot in history, because contrary to first glance, my father's legacy comes not from his presiding over the final act in the drama of fighting for equal rights. His legacy is about setting the stage." Why I love that quote so much, and I love all of these three quotes and all of these leaders that are represented here, is that you may just be setting the stage. It may not be the final fight. Mr. Smith was only setting the stage while also living in his purpose for Mr. Ballard. Mr. Ballard was only setting the stage while also living in his purpose for Preston Wilson. And Preston and Summer Wilson were only setting the stage for the next person while living in their purpose. You're only setting the stage, and at the same time, you are on the stage that was set before you. That's what legacy is continuing to build on that and continuing to not only for what has been done for you. Now I feel a great responsibility to Mr. Smith, who I will never know on this side of heaven. I don't know his family. I don't know his lineage. I don't even know what the store looked like, but his life impacted me. And even beyond that, in your family, the people that sacrificed for you. This will be an episode for another time, but if you are in the United States and you call the United States home, regardless of where you come from, you are a descendant of someone that believed for more. Think about that. Any ethnicity, nationality, background. I have Native American in me as well, Spanish, Mexican, all three of those. I am a descendant of someone at some point who believed for more. I owe it to the legacy that they left behind. I owe it to their sacrifice to continue to build on the stage that they set for me, and so do you. Thank you for joining me on another episode. Let's talk about it. Let's engage. If this impacted you, if this is something that you want to dive deeper on, or if this is something you say, hey, I just really felt this and I want to share it with someone. Me getting on this podcast and creating this time to share this content isn't about growing this business. We are doing fine. It's about legacy. I want my kids and grandkids, or your kids and grandkids, to be able to be served by this story. That I didn't hold this in, that if it was on my heart and God placed it there, that I shared it. That's what this platform is about. So the only compensation that I would ever ask for is that you share this with someone who needs it. You share this with someone that needs to develop that mindset, or has this mindset and you just simply want to encourage. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.